You open your eyes for the first time, and the world is a smear of darkness and vague, pressing warmth. There's no grand revelation, no celestial choir, just a blind, desperate wriggling in a damp, earthy-smelling crevice. You are a bundle of shivering nerves and uncoordinated limbs, your existence defined entirely by a singular, primal urge. Find the teat. This is not a request. It is a biological mandate, the first of many unforgiving directives that will govern your short, brutish life. The air is thick with the scent of your mother, a comforting aroma of milk and blood and raw power. But it is also laced with the smell of your siblings, your first and most intimate competitors. You feel their squirming bodies against yours, jostling for position in a silent, savage scrum. This is your welcome to the world. A dark hole, a desperate thirst, and a pile of rivals you are unfortunately related to. Ah, consciousness returns to another of nature's most tragically beautiful dead ends. You feel the first flicker of awareness, a confused spark in the vast, unforgiving machine of the food chain. You don't know it yet, but you have been born into a role of breathtaking contradiction, a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering designed for a world that is rapidly vanishing. Official designation: Panthera tigris, a name that rolls off the tongue with a certain gravitas, suggesting majesty, dominion, and a terrible, savage grace. It sounds like something that should be etched onto a monument. But you are known to the world simply as the tiger. A name that has become a synonym for power, a brand for everything from sports teams to gasoline. A title that humanity has plastered onto its own crude ambitions. And this, as we are about to see, is the ultimate cosmic setup for a joke so cruel, it could only have been written by the universe itself. Your first few weeks are a blur of suckling and sleeping. Your den, a term that lends far too much architectural credit to what is essentially a glorified hole, is your entire universe. It might be a rocky crevice, a thicket of impenetrable thorns, or a hollowed-out log. It is chosen not for its comfort, but for its strategic inconvenience to anything that might want to eat you. And make no mistake, everything wants to eat you. You are, at this stage, a squeaking, fleshy, defenseless nugget of protein. A walking appetizer with fetching stripes. Your mother, your sole protector and provider, is a phantom. She comes and goes, her massive form blotting out the entrance to your world, her scent a wave of reassurance before she vanishes again into the terrifying expanse you cannot yet see, off to commit the necessary murders to keep you alive. She is a god, and a deeply unreliable one at that. The immediate conflict, the first act in your personal tragedy, is not some external monster. It's the creature sleeping beside you, the one sharing your mother's warmth, your sibling. There are 2, maybe 3 others just like you. And there's a finite supply of milk. This isn't a gentle rivalry. It's your first lesson in economics, the brutal calculus of scarcity. The strongest of you shoves his way to the front. The weakest is nudged to the side, his faint squeaks a protest that goes unheard. There is no prize for second place in this competition. The reward for losing is to slowly fade, to become a footnote in your litter's history, your tiny body eventually carried off by your mother and left for the jackals. It's a ruthlessly efficient system. And then there is the matter of your father. He is not part of this family portrait. He is a ghost, a myth, a wandering threat. Should he stumble upon this den, he would not see his legacy. He would see a potential meal, or worse, the future competition for his own territory. Your family tree, you see, is not a wholesome structure of support. It is a carnivorous plant, and you are one of its most vulnerable blossoms. You are weaned off milk and onto meat. Your mother brings back chunks of flesh, torn from carcasses you can only imagine. The taste of blood is your new reality. And with this new diet comes a new imperative. You must learn to kill. Your classroom is the forest floor, a chaotic, unforgiving place teeming with potential meals and certain death. Your main adversaries during this juvenile struggle are legion. You are a walking veal cutlet, an easy target for any predator with a modicum of ambition. The dholes, the wild dogs of India, are a particular nightmare. They are not solitary hunters. They are a chattering, giggling, relentless mob, a wave of teeth and stamina that can overwhelm even your mother through sheer, bloody-minded persistence. To them, you are a bonus prize, a tender morsel to be torn apart after they've finished with the main course. Leopards, sleek and silent, see you as a convenient kill, a rival to be eliminated before you can grow into a threat. Sloth bears, shaggy and unpredictable, will happily flatten you with a single, irritated swipe. And in the reeds by the water's edge, pythons wait, masterpieces of patience, their lidless eyes watching for one clumsy, juvenile mistake. Your primary survival strategy at this point is, frankly, pathetic. It is to stay very, very close to your mother and hope that she is having a good day. You are utterly dependent on her skill, her strength, and her vigilance. Your life hangs by the thread of her existence. Your stripes, the feature that will one day make you an icon of natural perfection, are your only other defense. They are your camouflage. But let's be honest, it's a cheap invisibility cloak from a fantasy game, one that flickers on and off. In the tall, sun-dappled grass, you vanish. You are a living shadow, a ghost in the making. But step out into the open, onto a patch of dry earth or a sunlit rock, and you stick out like a neon sign. Your supposedly masterful camouflage is highly situational, a party trick that only works under specific lighting conditions. It's the biological equivalent of wearing a high-vis jacket and hoping no one notices you because you happen to be standing next to some traffic cones. It's a gamble, and the stakes are your life. Learning the ropes is a process of profound and repeated humiliation. Your mother begins your education by bringing back small, wounded animals. A fawn, perhaps, its leg already broken. A rabbit, stunned and terrified. Your job is to deliver the killing bite. Your first attempts are a farce. You will bat at the creature with oversized paws, unsure of the mechanics of murder. You will pounce with all the ferocity of a house cat attacking a dust bunny, only to be met with a surprising kick or a frantic scramble that leaves you bewildered. Your instincts are there, but they are raw, unrefined. They are a language you do not yet speak fluently. The clumsy failures are comical, but the lesson is deadly serious. Hesitation means hunger. As you grow bolder, you begin to accompany your mother on her hunts. You are instructed to watch, to stay silent, to learn the art of the stalk. You fail at this spectacularly. You will trip over a root at the critical moment, sending a herd of deer scattering in panic. You will let out an impatient sneeze, alerting a wild boar that it is being watched. Your mother will cast a look over her shoulder, a silent glare of pure, undiluted exasperation that needs no translation. Your first attempts at tackling larger prey are even more disastrous. You will leap onto the back of a sambar deer, full of youthful confidence, only to be unceremoniously thrown into a thorn bush. You will try to clamp your jaws on a buffalo's neck and receive a hoof to the head for your troubles, sending you tumbling through the dust with your ears ringing and your pride shattered. You will spend far more time nursing your wounds than you will feasting on your kills. For every majestic takedown the world imagines, there are 100 of these clumsy, painful, embarrassing faceplants. This is how you learn. Not through grace, but through failure. Somehow, against all statistical probability, you make it. The years of awkward failure and near-death experiences have forged you into something magnificent. You are now a 200-kilogram engine of destruction, a symphony of muscle and sinew wrapped in a coat of fire and shadow. You are an apex predator. The forest, which was once a landscape of terror, is now your kingdom. Its other inhabitants, who once saw you as a potential meal, now see you as an ambulatory nightmare. When you walk, the cacophony of the jungle falls into a hush. The monkeys issue their sharp, barking alarms from the safety of the canopy. The deer freeze, their bodies rigid with a terror so pure it is almost beautiful. You can kill anything you can catch. You are the embodiment of power, the final word in any argument. You leave your mother, or more accurately, she drives you away, and you set out to carve out a piece of this world for yourself. You find a suitable territory, one with enough water, enough prey, and enough cover. You claim it. For a fleeting, glorious moment, life seems to have improved beyond your wildest dreams. You have a home. You have a full belly. You have security. A thick, comforting blanket of success wraps around you. You have arrived. And just as you begin to enjoy this hard-won stability, the twist arrives. The real misery begins. The sucky, soul-crushing reality of your existence settles in, and it is far worse than being hunted. Your new problem, the one that will dominate the rest of your days, is real estate management. Your territory, you quickly learn, is not a kingdom to be ruled. It is a prison to be patrolled. It is a vast, invisible cage whose bars you must constantly reinforce. And so your life becomes a tedious, exhausting, repetitive march. Every single day, you must walk the borders. Miles and miles of it. You walk, you sniff, you listen. You rub your cheeks on trees, leaving behind your scent from glands you didn't know you had. And most importantly, you spray your urine. You turn your back to a tree, lift your tail, and blast it with a chemical signature that is uniquely yours. This isn't an act of relief. It's a legal notice. It's a passive-aggressive memo to the universe that says, "This patch of dirt is mine. Trespassers will be mauled." Your majestic existence has been reduced to being the superintendent of a large, unfurnished property. It is the wild equivalent of being the president of a condo board, and it is every bit as glamorous as it sounds. The worst part of this new job, the neighbors, other tigers. Your life, which you thought would be one of glorious solitude, is now defined by the constant, low-grade stress of avoiding or confronting them. The scent marks on your trees are not just warnings. They are messages. They tell you who is nearby, how recently they passed, whether they are male or female, healthy or weak. It is a social network built on suspicion and latent violence. And then there is the matter of procreation. Mating is no longer a simple biological imperative. It is a brutal, high-stakes, and often violent negotiation. A female in heat will call, and you will answer, but so will every other male within earshot. This leads to standoffs, to roaring contests that shake the leaves from the trees, and, inevitably, to fights. These are not noble duels. They are savage, chaotic brawls that leave both victor and vanquished scarred and bleeding. For a few brief, frantic moments of genetic perpetuation, you risk being blinded, having your leg broken, or receiving a wound that will fester and kill you weeks later. You didn't escape the struggle for survival when you reached adulthood. You just graduated to a more sophisticated and emotionally taxing form of it. You have traded the fear of being eaten for the anxiety of mortgages and the horror of violent sexual encounters. It's a terrible deal. The peak was tragically short. The decline is agonizingly, painfully slow. It begins not with a bang, but with a tooth. Your canines, those magnificent, scimitar-like daggers that have been the tools of your trade, begin to betray you. They are worn down from years of crushing bone. One day, during a struggle with a particularly robust wild boar, you feel a sickening crack. A canine fractures. It is not just an inconvenience. It is a death sentence on an installment plan. The pain is a constant, throbbing distraction. The tooth becomes a liability, a point of weakness. Every bite is a gamble. Your ability to deliver a swift, clean, killing bite is compromised. Hunts that should have been simple now become desperate, protracted struggles. The prey you once dispatched with contemptuous ease now has a fighting chance. They escape, wounded, leaving you hungry and exhausted. Then the cold fire of arthritis settles into your joints. The damp chill of the monsoon season becomes a special kind of torture. The explosive, earth-shattering pounce that was your signature move becomes a stiff, awkward lunge. You are no longer fast enough to catch the swift, healthy deer. They bound away, their white tails flashing a final, mocking salute. You are reduced to hunting the weak, the old, the sick. You become a predator of the pathetic. And when even those become too difficult, you turn to acts of pure desperation. You might attack a porcupine. It is a slow, stupid creature, an easy target. But it is a trap. You kill it, but its quills become embedded in your face, your chest, your paws. You cannot remove them. They break off under the skin, festering, creating abscesses that burn with infection. The pain is relentless. It is a slow, insidious poisoning from within, a cruel joke played on a king brought low. Your status plummets. The scent marks you so diligently sprayed on the trees along your border begin to change. The chemical signals that once screamed, "King of the forest, fear me," now whisper a different message. Old, weak, desperate. Other predators, scavengers who once gave you a wide berth, now follow you at a disrespectful distance, waiting for you to fail. They smell your decline. And then, the ultimate indignity arrives. A younger, stronger male tiger appears at the edge of your territory. He is a mirror image of your former self, a walking embodiment of arrogant, brutal power. He smells your weakness on the wind, reads it in the faltering scent of your urine. He does not want to share. He does not want to negotiate. He wants your land, your water, your prey. He wants to erase you. The final confrontation is not a glorious battle for the ages. It is a pathetic, one-sided beating. He is faster, stronger. His teeth are sharp and whole. Your challenge is met with a dismissive, bone-shattering swat of a paw. The fight is over before it truly begins. You are a relic, a ghost, and he is the brutal, unforgiving future. You do not die in a blaze of glory. There is no epic final stand. You crawl away from the confrontation, your body broken, your spirit shattered. The younger male doesn't even grant you the dignity of a killing bite. You are simply discarded, a piece of trash to be cleared out. You drag yourself to a secluded spot, perhaps a familiar thicket where you once rested in the sun during your prime. But there is no comfort here now. There is only the gnawing emptiness in your belly and the searing pain in your bones. You are too weak to hunt. The sounds of the forest, the calls of the deer, and the birds that once signaled opportunity, now serve only as a taunting reminder of what you have lost. You starve. It is a slow, undignified, and deeply private process. Your magnificent striped coat, the envy of the natural world, becomes matted and dull. Your powerful muscles waste away, leaving a gaunt frame. You die alone in a ditch, or curled up beneath a bush, and your end is not marked by a thunderclap, but by the quiet, industrious buzz of flies laying their eggs in your cooling flesh. Your body, once the apex of predatory perfection, is now just an anonymous contribution to the nutrient cycle. A deeply undignified end for a supposed monarch. And as your body begins its slow, unceremonious return to the earth, miles away, in a dark, damp den, the cycle resets itself with brutal indifference. A female, perhaps one of your own forgotten daughters, licks her newborn litter clean. They are blind, helpless, and squeaking, just as you once were. One of them, slightly smaller than the rest, is already being nudged away from the teat by its stronger, more aggressive sibling. The whole pointless, tragic play, with its predictable acts of struggle, fleeting success, and inevitable decline, is beginning all over again. The universe has simply recast the lead role. Your story is over, but the show must go on. It is a production with an infinite run, and no one ever learns their lines any better. So, why does it suck to be a tiger? It's not just the hunger or the violence. It's the profound, cosmic futility of it all. Because your entire existence is a savage, violent, and ultimately meaningless struggle. A biological trap designed by nature with a single, cruel purpose. To ensure that the absolute best you can ever hope for, the pinnacle of success in your world, is to die of old age before something bigger, younger, and stronger than you brutally murders you for your property. So, that's your life. A short, brutal, and ultimately meaningless cycle, repeated ad nauseam. A tragicomedy of errors written by genetics and directed by starvation. You'd think that would be enough tragedy for one creature. You'd think that surviving your own family, your own neighbors, and your own biology would be the whole story. But you, Panthera tigris, were unlucky. You were unlucky enough to exist at the same time as another, even more problematic, hyper-successful primate. A primate that learned to walk on two legs, carry grudges, and hold opinions about things it didn't understand. And that's when your personal, biological tragedy became a historical catastrophe. When the first of these hairless apes stumbled out of the savannah and into your jungle, their primitive brains short-circuited. You were unlike anything they had ever seen. You were a flash of fire in the shadows, a living paradox of terror and beauty. You moved with a liquid grace that defied your immense size. You were a walking contradiction, a nightmare clad in a coat of sunset. Their reaction was a confused cocktail of awe, fear, and a dawning, practical question. Can we eat it? Faced with something so magnificent and terrifying, they did what their species always does when confronted with the unknown. They tried to stuff you into a neat, conceptual box. They tried to give you a job description. In some places, you were instantly promoted. You became a forest god, a divine spirit, a messenger from a world beyond their comprehension. They saw your power, the effortless way you commanded life and death, and they assumed it must have a purpose, a higher meaning. They couldn't conceive of power for power's sake. It was a classic case of overthinking, of projecting their own desperate need for narrative onto the stark, silent prose of the jungle. They carved your likeness onto rocks, painted your stripes onto the walls of their caves, and whispered your name into their fireside stories. In other places, the verdict was less flattering. You were a demon, a man-eater, a monster that lurked in the darkness beyond the safety of the firelight. Your stripes were not seen as beautiful camouflage. They were the markings of a fiend, a warning sign from the underworld. Your nocturnal habits and silent tread were not predatory adaptations. They were proof of your sinister, supernatural nature. The sheer absurdity of this situation is worth savoring. Your entire identity, the very definition of your being, was being workshopped by a committee of creatures who had only just figured out that sharpening a stick makes it better for poking things. You were no longer simply a tiger, a hunter of deer and boar. You were a symbol, a projection of their own deepest fears and most grandiose fantasies. You were either a god to be worshipped or a monster to be vanquished. There was no middle ground, no option for you to just be left alone. Your existence had been hijacked, and you were now an unwilling character in the rambling, incoherent epic of human mythology. This new, divine status, you might think, would come with some perks. Perhaps a bit of respect, a wide berth, a general agreement to not poke you with the aforementioned sharp sticks. You would be wrong. So, what did being a god actually get you? A nice cave painting that didn't really capture your good side. A moment of hushed reverence before they organized themselves to try and kill you. They worshipped your strength, and then immediately set about trying to steal it for themselves. The first organized hunts against you were not for pest control or for food. They were for prestige. To kill you, the forest god, was to absorb your power. It was a promotion. It was a way for one ape to prove to the other apes that he was the most clever and brave. Your divine attributes were systematically harvested. Your whiskers, which you used to navigate the world in darkness, were plucked from your dead face and kept as charms for good luck in their own hunts. Your magnificent claws, designed for gripping prey and climbing trees, were strung onto necklaces as proof of the wearer's bravery. Your bones, the very scaffold of your power, were ground into dubious powders and ingested in the hope that they might cure cowardice or impotence. The ultimate irony began to take shape. Being worshipped was just a more poetic and ritualized form of being butchered. They didn't want your spirit. They wanted your stuff. Your divinity was just a brand name they slapped on your component parts before sale. Then, they started to build things. Not just fires and sharp stakes, but settlements. Pathetic little clusters of mud and thatch huts, huddled together at the edge of your hunting grounds. They cleared patches of your forest to plant their strange, unappetizing grasses, their first clumsy attempts at agriculture. And with this encroachment, your status underwent another dramatic revision. Suddenly, you weren't a god anymore. You were an inconvenience. You would wander through their sad excuse for a farm, following a path your ancestors had walked for 10,000 years, and you would be labeled a pest. You were a threat to their livelihood, an obstacle to their manifest destiny of converting the entire world into a single, sprawling mud hut suburb. You would take one of their scrawny, bleeding livestock, an animal that, to your highly specialized predatory brain, was indistinguishable from any other medium-sized herbivore, and you would be declared a villain of the highest order. You became a man-eater. It's a wonderfully loaded term. It implies a malicious, specific appetite for their species, as if you were purposefully seeking them out. The truth was far more mundane. You were an opportunist. An old, injured tiger, unable to catch a fleet-footed deer, might find a slow, two-legged creature to be a surprisingly easy meal. But to them, it was never a crime of opportunity. It was an act of pure evil. They were the protagonists of the story, and you had just been cast as the monster. The injustice of it is staggering, even by the universe's low standards. You were being punished for trespassing in a home that had been yours for countless generations before they even learned how to walk upright properly. They moved into your neighborhood, built their flimsy structures all over your lawn, and then had the audacity to blame you for the noise. You were declared a villain for simply existing, for continuing to follow the biological script you had been given. Your crime was your refusal to conveniently disappear now that they had arrived. This pattern would prove to be a durable one, their expansion, followed by your demonization. So, what is the ultimate, cynical takeaway from this first, confusing chapter of your relationship with humanity? It was that being worshipped is simply the prelude to being sacrificed. Their reverence was just the initial market research phase before the launch of a new product line, tiger-based amulets and bragging rights. Being a symbol is just another word for being a target. Their awe was not a shield. It was an invitation. It was the spotlight that illuminated you, separating you from the other, less impressive animals, and marking you for a special kind of attention. This was the first tragic legacy they bestowed upon you. They looked at you, a perfect predator living in a complex ecosystem, and all they could see was a story about themselves. It was a story of gods to be placated, monsters to be slain, and resources to be claimed. And in every version of that story, you lost. As their primitive societies coalesced into empires, and their superstitions hardened into organized religion and commerce, their perception of you changed once more. The awe and fear, while still present, were now filtered through a new lens of cold, calculating utility. You were no longer a mysterious god or a chaotic demon. You were a resource to be quantified, an asset to be logged, captured, and exploited. In this new era of empires, the question was no longer, are you a god or a monster? It was, are you a tool, a product, or a bad omen? To the emperors and kings of these burgeoning civilizations, you became the ultimate symbol of their own power, a living trophy that testified to the reach and might of their domain. Your wildness, the very essence of your being, was repackaged as a royal spectacle. Mughal emperors in India, for example, were obsessed with you. They didn't just hunt you. They staged elaborate, theatrical slaughters involving hundreds of beaters and dozens of elephants, turning the forest into a grand stadium for their own egos. After the hunt, they would commission delicate miniature paintings to commemorate the event, immortalizing their triumph over the savage world. You were a prop in their pageantry. Roman emperors, with their characteristic lack of subtlety, had you shipped in cramped, stinking crates all the way to Italy. There, you would be starved, prodded, and finally unleashed into the Colosseum, to the roar of a bloodthirsty crowd, to be pitted against some hapless gladiator or a cohort of condemned criminals. Your desperate, terrified fight for survival was turned into public entertainment, a brief, bloody distraction for the masses. For the merchants and traders, you were something even less glamorous. You were an entry in a ledger book. You were a pelt, a rug, a decorative item for the home of a wealthy bureaucrat. Your skin, a masterpiece of natural selection, was flayed from your body, tanned, and sold as the ultimate status symbol, a declaration of wealth and power that could be casually thrown over a chair. And your bones, a constant throughout this miserable history, became a cornerstone of traditional medicine. Ground into powders, steeped in wine, or boiled into glues and jellies, they were fraudulently sold as a panacea for everything from arthritis to cowardice. This trade, built on a foundation of pure superstition, created a relentless demand for your dead body. You were no longer a creature. You were a collection of valuable parts. Your existence was now measured not in seasons or territories, but in currency, and your value was always highest when you were dead. This was the age of your systematic commodification. Your transition from a wild, autonomous being to a piece of property was complete. The iron trap and the snare were refined. Your capture became a science. You were an entry in an inventory, an exotic beast of burden for their wars of conquest, a valuable commodity in the burgeoning global trade networks that their new, ocean-faring ships were opening up. In some corners of their world, you were still associated with dark forces. In Europe, your cousin the cat was being branded a familiar of witches, a symbol of demonic influence. While you didn't have that specific public relations problem, you were still seen as part of a wild, untamed world that needed to be subdued, cataloged, and if possible, sold for a profit. Your new job title, unspoken but universally understood, was property. And property owners, as you were about to learn in the most brutal way imaginable, can do whatever they want with their possessions. Their progress was your apocalypse. Every leap forward in their technology was another nail in your coffin. The invention and proliferation of the firearm was the most devastating blow. It fundamentally and permanently altered the nature of the hunt. The contest, which had at least a semblance of fairness when it involved a man with a spear or a bow, now became a one-sided slaughter. The odds were no longer just stacked against you. They were sitting in a different stadium altogether. A brave hunter risking his life in a face-to-face encounter was one thing. A wealthy colonial administrator, sipping gin and tonic in a specially constructed tree stand, or machin, waiting for his beaters to drive you towards his high-powered rifle, was something else entirely. It was not a hunt. It was an execution. The British Raj in India perfected this industrial-scale extermination and called it sport. It was a central part of the colonial identity. They held competitions, with cash prizes awarded for the largest tiger killed. They offered bounties, encouraging villagers to kill you and your cubs, framing it as a civic duty to eliminate a dangerous pest. They developed a whole culture around it, complete with specialized rifles, safari gear, and the all-important post-hunt photograph. The image is a classic of the era. A smug-looking man in a pith helmet, one foot resting proprietorially on your magnificent, lifeless body, surrounded by his native servants. It was the ultimate expression of colonial domination, the taming of the savage land, embodied in your corpse. They systematically cleared you out, not just for sport, but to make way for their version of civilization. Your forests were felled for timber to build their railways. Your grasslands were cleared for tea plantations. You were an obstacle to commerce, a relic that stood in the way of profit. Their expansion across the globe was relentless. It didn't just take your land. It annihilated it. They drained the swamps, logged the forests, and plowed the plains. Your vast, interconnected territories, which allowed you and your prey to roam over huge distances, were shattered. They were fragmented into small, isolated pockets of wilderness, surrounded by a hostile sea of agriculture and human settlement. You became trapped in these ecological islands, unable to find new mates, unable to follow the migrating herds. Your gene pool stagnated. You were forced into ever closer contact with humans and their livestock, which only increased the conflict and accelerated your slaughter. They weren't just killing you as individuals anymore. They were dismantling your world, piece by piece, until there was nowhere left for you to go. They were engineering your extinction, not with a single, merciful blow, but through a slow, grinding process of attrition, a war against your very habitat. What is the deeply ironic, profoundly bitter summary of this age of empires and industry? It is that the very things they claim to admire in you, your untamable strength, your breathtaking beauty, your ferocious spirit, were the exact reasons they hunted you to the brink of oblivion. You were too magnificent to be left alone. Your power was a challenge to their own. Your beauty was a commodity they coveted. Your skin was a decoration. Your existence an obstacle. Your tragic legacy from this era is a simple, brutal equation. Your beauty was a death warrant, and your strength was an open invitation for them to prove theirs was greater with the help of gunpowder and steel. They built their empires on the ruins of your world, and called it progress. Then, after centuries of relentless, industrialized slaughter, something shifted. It wasn't a sudden burst of moral enlightenment. It was, more pragmatically, the fact that they were beginning to run out of you to kill. Scarcity, it turns out, is a powerful driver of value. As your numbers dwindled to a pathetic few thousand, scattered across shrinking pockets of Asia, you were suddenly rebranded. The age of slaughter gave way to the age of sentimental hypocrisy. In this new, modern world of science and industry, the question changed again. It was no longer about your utility as a product or a trophy. The new question was, are you a scientific specimen, a logo, or a problem to be solved? In the age of science, you were transformed into a data point. You became Panthera tigris, a fascinating subject for study. Biologists began to track you, to put heavy, uncomfortable radio collars around your neck to monitor your movements. They collected your droppings, or scat, to analyze your diet. They set up camera traps to capture candid, grainy, black and white photos of you in the dead of night. Your life, once a private epic of survival, was now raw data for their academic papers. You were a genome to be sequenced, a population to be modeled, a behavior pattern to be analyzed. You were studied with a detached, clinical curiosity, but you were rarely, if ever, truly understood. For the general public, your transformation was even more bizarre. You became a logo. Your powerful silhouette was used to sell gasoline, your striped pattern to adorn fashion accessories, your face to serve as the mascot for a sports team. You became a celebrity, but you were a celebrity with no rights and no income. You were a cute, anthropomorphized character in children's movies and books, a cuddly, talking caricature named Raja, or Shere Khan, who bore absolutely no resemblance to the grim, solitary killer you actually were. And most poignantly, you became the sad, beautiful face of conservation. Your image was plastered onto pamphlets, posters, and fundraising websites, your soulful eyes staring out at the viewer, a powerful tool for soliciting guilt-driven donations. You had been commercialized into a harmless, two-dimensional version of your former self. And for industry and government, the forces that still held the real power, you remained what you had always been at your core, a problem. You were a nuisance to be managed. Your existence was a barrier to the construction of a new mine, a proposed highway, a hydroelectric dam. You were a line item in an environmental impact report, a potential source of negative publicity, a complication for the relentless march of economic development. Three versions of the modern tiger, all existing at once. The specimen for the scientist, the logo for the consumer, and the problem for the corporation. None of them had anything to do with the reality of being you. After centuries of being a target, and decades of being an obstacle, your final job description was written. Your new, and perhaps ultimate, purpose in the human world is to inspire guilt. You are no longer hunted for sport. You are managed for their conscience. You have been repurposed as a living, breathing monument to their regret. Your primary function now is to make them feel better about what they've done. You are a spectacle in a zoo. This is perhaps the most surreal chapter of your existence. You are placed in an enclosure, a carefully designed habitat that is a sad, sterile parody of your true home. It has a concrete rock for you to lie on, a small, chlorinated pool for you to splash in, and a plate of horse meat delivered to you at the same time every day. You exist to be gawked at by crowds of the very same species that destroyed your world. They press their faces to the glass, their children shouting your name, and they marvel at your beauty and power, safely contained for their viewing pleasure. Your image, as we've noted, is a fundraising tool. It is used to fuel a multi-million-dollar conservation industry, an entire economic sector built on the premise of saving you from the very problems they created. Your helplessness is now your primary economic value. The sadder your story, the more donations pour in. You are the poster child for their environmental anxieties, a living symbol of their destructive past and their desperate, often clumsy attempts at redemption. You have been cast in the role of the beautiful victim, and you are expected to play your part with quiet dignity. You are a living, breathing before picture in their global home renovation project. The absurdity is almost poetic. The very creature they once paid bounties to kill, they now pay fortunes to preserve. The skills that made you a perfect predator, your stealth, your strength, your killing instinct, are now entirely redundant. In fact, they are a liability. A problem tiger, one that dares to act like a real tiger and perhaps attacks livestock, is quickly captured and relocated, or simply eliminated from the gene pool. You are expected to be a tiger in appearance only. You are to be beautiful, majestic, and completely docile. You must be a wild animal that has politely agreed to forget what it means to be wild. Your new usefulness is to be a living statue, a testament to their newfound kindness. You are a full-time employee in the business of absolving human guilt, and the pay is terrible. And what does this conservation actually feel like from your side of the fence, from inside the enclosure or the carefully managed reserve? It feels like a comfortable cage. It is a life sentence of safety and profound, soul-crushing boredom. You are fed, so you never feel the sharp, clarifying pang of true hunger. You are safe from poachers, so you never feel the prickle of true fear. You are protected from everything that makes a life. Your instincts, honed over millions of years of evolution, have been rendered obsolete. The urge to hunt, the need to patrol a vast territory, the violent imperative to mate and fight, all of these things atrophy from disuse. They have been surgically removed from your existence by the sterile comfort of the sanctuary. You have everything you need to survive, and nothing you need to live. It is the prison of kindness. You are watched, constantly. In the zoo, it is the unblinking gaze of 1,000 tourists, their cameras flashing, their voices a meaningless drone on the other side of the glass. In the wild reserve, it is more insidious. It's the hidden camera traps that record your every move. It's the radio collar around your neck, transmitting your location to a satellite, turning your private wanderings into a dotted line on a researcher's map. Your every move is documented, analyzed, and published. You are a living museum exhibit, a ghost in a striped coat, forever being observed by the descendants of your destroyers. They love you now, you see, but it is the suffocating, controlling love of a jailer for his prize inmate. It is a love that values your existence, but not your autonomy. It is a love that wants to preserve your body, but is utterly indifferent to your spirit. This is the great collateral damage of their modern compassion. After taking everything else, they have now taken your purpose. A tiger that does not hunt is not a tiger. A tiger that does not roam is not a tiger. A tiger that does not feel fear or hunger or rage is not a tiger. It is a biological specimen, a living artifact kept alive by artificial means. You have been preserved in the amber of their guilt, a beautiful, hollow shell. The tourists look at you, pacing back and forth in your enclosure, and they see majesty. They do not see the mind-numbing tedium, the slow-motion insanity of an apex predator with nothing to prey on. Your endless pacing is not a sign of your wild spirit. It is the animal equivalent of a man banging his head against the wall of his prison cell. It is a symptom of a mind that has been stripped of its entire reason for being. And so we arrive at the final, crushing irony of your long, miserable story with humanity. After pushing you to the very edge of non-existence, after slaughtering you for sport, for profit, and for convenience, they now pat themselves on the back for keeping the last few of you alive. They celebrate their own magnanimity. They host galas and fundraisers in your name. They create Save the Tiger campaigns and sell t-shirts with your face on them, donating a tiny fraction of the profits to keeping you fed in your cage. They took your forests, they took your prey, they took your freedom. And in return, they gave you a cage, a daily feeding schedule, and a corporate sponsorship program. This is the ultimate, most profound punchline. They don't spend millions of dollars to save you for your sake. They do it for theirs. They do it so they can look at you, safe behind the glass or contained within the invisible fences of a reserve, and tell themselves that they are the good guys now. They do it to prove that they can fix what they broke. You are the final, living proof of their power. Not their power to destroy, which they have already demonstrated with terrifying efficiency, but their power to save. Their ultimate act of domination was not to kill you. It was to become your god, your zookeeper, your parole officer. It was to take full responsibility for your continued existence, thereby robbing you of the last shred of your wildness. Your tragic, final legacy is to serve as the living, breathing proof that their ultimate act of domination was not to kill you, but to save you. And to have the audacity to call it kindness. The hypocrisy is breathtaking in its scope. They weep for your plight while driving cars fueled by the processed remnants of ancient forests. They wear your image on a shirt made in a factory that pollutes the very rivers you once drank from. They champion your cause on social media from a device built with minerals mined from habitats just like yours. You have become the perfect symbol for their compartmentalized concern, a problem that they can feel strongly about for a few minutes before moving on to the next item in their feed. Your potential extinction is a sad story they tell themselves, a tragedy that allows them to feel a flicker of empathy without requiring any meaningful change in their own behavior. The conservation efforts themselves, born from this well of guilt, are a tragicomedy of their own. They create protected corridors for you to move between fragmented forests, narrow strips of land that run between highways and factories, asking you to please use the designated crosswalk. They engage in captive breeding programs, a desperate, clinical attempt to maintain genetic diversity, where your mating choices are determined by a spreadsheet. They will literally fly your frozen sperm across the world to inseminate a female you have never met. It's an arranged marriage on a global scale, a last-ditch effort to undo a century of destruction with a test tube and a prayer. And what is the endgame? What is the ideal future they imagine for you? Is it a world where you are returned to your ancestral forests, free to roam and hunt? Of course not. Those forests are gone, or they are too full of people. The ideal future is a world where you exist in carefully managed, heavily policed tiger parks. A world where you are essentially a wild animal living in a planet-sized zoo. You will be counted, monitored, and managed forever. Your population will be kept at a level that is sustainable, not for you, but for them. A level that is impressive enough to be a conservation success story, but not so large that you become an inconvenience again. You will be a permanent ward of the state, a wild creature on eternal probation. The final truth of your long relationship with humanity is this: they have always seen you as a reflection of themselves. In the beginning, you reflected their fears and their gods. In the age of empires, you reflected their power and their lust for conquest. And now, in the modern age, you reflect their guilt and their desperate need for redemption. It has never, not for one single moment, been about you. It has always been about them. You are a canvas onto which they projected their own evolving psychodrama. You are the silent, striped witness to their entire bloody history. And your reward for this service is a life sentence in a gilded cage, where you will be cared for, admired, and pitied by your conquerors until the end of time. This is their final gift to you: a safe, comfortable, and utterly meaningless existence. It is the cruelest trick of all: to be saved by your destroyers, and to have to watch as they congratulate themselves for it. The tragic arc is now complete. You began as a god, were demoted to a monster, repurposed as a product, and have now been sanctified as a martyr. Each stage of this journey was a step down, a further removal from your essential nature. The humans who painted you on cave walls at least saw you as a powerful, autonomous force. The ones who stare at you through the reinforced glass of a zoo enclosure see a beautiful object, a living relic that they are noble for preserving. They have taken the wild, unpredictable fire of your being and contained it in a neat, safe, and easily digestible package. Consider the language they use. They talk of managing your population, as if you were inventory in a warehouse. They speak of human-tiger conflict, a neutral-sounding term that sanitizes the reality of a global superpower systematically eradicating a species, and then complaining when the few survivors get in their way. The conflict is not between human and tiger. It is between the entire, sprawling, industrial human enterprise and the last, ragged remnants of the natural world you represent. You are not a combatant in a war. You are a refugee in a land that no longer recognizes your citizenship. Even the very act of seeing you has been curated. Most humans will never see you in the wild. Their entire understanding of you is built on curated images. The majestic, slow-motion footage in a documentary. The sanitized environment of a zoo, the snarling caricature in a cartoon. These images are powerful, but they are lies. They edit out the filth, the fear, the starvation, the constant, grinding struggle of your real life. They edit out the pathetic, undignified death that awaits most of you. They present a highlight reel of your majesty, which makes your plight all the more tragic and their role as saviors all the more heroic. You are now more valuable as a symbol than you ever were as a living creature. Your symbolic value is immense. You represent the wildness they have lost in themselves. You represent the beauty they are capable of destroying. You represent the possibility of redemption, the idea that it's not too late to fix their mistakes. You are a potent cocktail of nostalgia, guilt, and hope. A living, breathing brand. And brands must be protected, not for their own sake, but for the sake of the shareholders. In this case, the entire human race that benefits from the story your survival tells them about themselves. They are not saving the tiger. They are saving the idea of the tiger, and with it, the idea of their own capacity for grace. Your continued managed existence is the proof they need that they are not, after all, the villains of this story. But you know the truth. You've had a front row seat for the entire, sordid affair. You know that kindness from a killer is just another form of control.